A warm welcome to Dr. Swaran Singh. Otherwise, how are you? I trust you're in good form. We've had the opportunity of interacting in Peking during some meetings. So I look forward to your presentation. You have about 12 minutes to make your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, Secretary Riaz Khokar. I am pleasantly surprised, sir, that you remembered our having met in few conferences in China. I also wish to sincerely compliment and thank Ambassador Nadeem Riaz and his team, particularly Imran Sardar, who's been in touch with me, and also Frederick Ebert Stiftung team for making me part of this hybrid first regional dialogue of IRS. And I look forward to listening to other speakers and other sessions and learning from their perspectives. Now, I also understand, sir, that I'm not sitting next to you, so you will not have the chance to pass on the slip to me to stop talking. So I will try to speak, stick to my time and the topic given to me. The subject given to me is to speak on analyzing conflict in Afghanistan and implications for the region. Afghanistan has been on our psyche, particularly for last 1 year or maybe 8 to 9 months, because every day things are happening which are impacting the entire region. So let me begin by stepping, backwards and looking at structural drivers to begin with that are creating those opportunities and challenges for entire region in that sense. So the first thing that I want to underline is how way back in 1749, the Durrani Empire was finally consolidated. And the current borders of Afghanistan that we have were more or less finalized in the last decade of 19th century. Now, what pushed, other than Ahmad Shah Abdali's drive to build that empire, are structural factors of British Empire in India. And then, of course, we are talking of the consolidated India of that time. And the Tsarist Russia, they are fundamentally trying to create a buffer between them, and similar buffers have been created, choosing difficult territories among various instances in history between various empires, and one could take other examples as well. And so, therefore, the fundamental existence as a buffer between great empires is what ensured regional stability, because Afghanistan was seen as buffer, beyond a point unreachable. You would remember pacification campaigns of British India, because at that time Pakistan and India were together. And in that sense, opposite is also true, that given the difficult territory, Afghans always historically depended on resources being raised from outside Afghanistan. So it's not just Ashraf Ghani's government which was being kind of supported by external aid. Historically, Afghans have depended on external resources to support them. And that made Afghans really very, very rugged and very, very sort of hardworking people. And the whole myth of invincibility that came out of that. But fundamentally, the great powers treating it as a buffer was the fundamental reason making this whole region stable. And regional stability, therefore, was undergirded by this structural format. Now, the first point then I want to make is it was with the communist coup in 1978, followed by Soviet intervention in Afghanistan, that centuries-old format of treating Afghanistan as a buffer came to an end. So the buffer status ended here. And that led to one after another successively weak governments that very often did not survive very long. And that really raised now not just tribal and clan identities becoming much more stronger, but also intra-Afghan animosities over a period of time. And that is where now we move into the next phase of regional instability. And I'm linking here Afghanistan because that is the topic given to me. So now we move into instability in Afghanistan and in the region as an outproduct of that structural change. The next stage to change was the raising of Mujahideen, which not just worked on these contesting identities, which were much more local in terms of clan and tribal identities, but were now being enormously armed by external powers. And therefore, a phase of radicalization and a phase of extremism and radical religious identities now step in. So we now see a period where gradually Afghan nationalism has disappeared and Islam has replaced it. Mujahideen were replaced later by Taliban. So in that sense, we now have not just local indigenous identities being contested, but each of them being enormously empowered with capacity to unleash violence. And that is what now is boomeranging to powers that supported that kind of transformation of making Afghanistan, lose its national identity and move to clan and tribal identities, then move to enormous, arming of these outfits there, unleashing this whole process of religious identities and religious radicalism. And Taliban is an outcome of that. But now boomerang impact is that is now impacting entire region, and Pakistan knows it best than anybody else. Indeed, if you look back, the shift to raising of Mujahideen and later Taliban is directly related to the fact that when Soviets moved into Afghanistan, they were friends of India. India at that time was becoming a nuclear nation. This was also a period of General Ziaul Haq's Islamization of Pakistan. And of course, he is the one who gave concept of strategic depth, which Pakistan wanted to ensure. And in fact, Pakistan wanted to use this engagement. In fact, there are even conversations during Ziaul Haq period of treating Afghanistan as a confederate part of Pakistan, and moving now, away from South Asia into building bridges with West Asia, with Central Asia, treating Afghanistan as a stepping stone in that context. I can understand that strategic thinking, but outcome of what we also call the Kalashnikov culture, which has moved in from there to Kashmir, to Chechnya, to Xinjiang, all the way to Bosnia. But let's focus on South Asia and not go too far. And let me say fundamentally the challenges and opportunities that these structural changes have now thrown up to us in my last 3 or 4 minutes. Immediately, what you're seeing now as a result of this radicalization and Kalashnikov culture is a reconsolidation of Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. We are noticing this uptick of military attacks inside Pakistan. We are also seeing Pakistan military going all the way into Afghanistan to hit on sanctuaries of some of these outfits that Pakistan thinks are terrorists or are dangerous people. We have seen enormous border skirmishes. We are also seeing Islamic State, Khorasan province being extremely active now. So this instability is something which not just Pakistan is facing, but I'm sure other countries or other societies in the region will also face very soon increasingly. And that is not that Taliban or Emirate of Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan will begin to militarily support outfits in other countries. The very example of Taliban by force throwing out powerful nations out of Afghanistan, and I sometimes call it in a lighter vein, regime change in reverse. You saw George Bush Jr. giving us this idea of regime change, and now we have a regime supported by United States being replaced. So it's a regime change in reverse.
May I request you to please focus on how India is seeing things now in the next few years. Just focus on that. You have made an excellent presentation. We fully understand that, but can you just focus on that bit and conclude?
Thank you, sir. I'll take 2 minutes, and on your request, now I will focus on India because that was not the topic given to me earlier. But let me say from Indian perspective, which I see a very competent Dr. Maliha Lodhi is going to speak after me, and I was looking forward to listening to her on that subject. But on your instructions or command, I will now spend my next 2 minutes talking about how India looks at this regional stability, and Afghanistan is still my focus. I think first thing to understand here is how there are going to be both challenges and also certain positive outcomes. That conflict very often not just throws up challenges, conflict also creatively used can create opportunities. And I think the very first opportunity that I notice here is how Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India are beginning to work together. And yesterday only we started from India sending wheat thanks to overland route being allowed by Pakistan. And therefore, this could actually break ice between India and Pakistan over a period of time because three countries are now beginning to work together. And therefore, I thought that could maybe open a new kind of opportunities for India, Pakistan to begin to talk together. I remember a few days back, Dawn had a story which said that India, Pakistan were already having back channel discussions. I'm not sure of what is happening in that regard. But fundamentally, India had also started, for example, the regional security dialogue by Indian National Security Advisor. And I think all neighboring countries of Afghanistan, other than Pakistan and China, had joined in that. And the two similar regional security dialogues had happened in Iran, of course. So that is another area which could continue over a period of time. Energy security, I understand Prime Minister Imran Khan is in Moscow, and energy is an important subject in discussions. TAPI is something which originally United States UNOCOL had proposed to ensure that they can keep Central Asia insulated from either Russia or Iran or West Asia and bring that energy to South Asia. It was a dead end, but I understand that Taliban has made some very, very positive noises to reviving the TAPI. That could be another positive outcome of some possibilities here. So there are positive spin-offs definitely, but as I said, I was trying to avoid that speaking from Indian perspective because Dr. Maliha Lodhi was going to speak on that. But fundamentally, I think India has made a clear distinction, and that's my last point to make, that even if Taliban has not been able to match up to the benchmarks that India has outlined along with the international community, India wants to reach out to Afghan people who are in enormous distress. So whether it is the 1st January 1.6 ton supply of medicines through Iran, or it is now beginning of 50,000 tons of wheat going through Pakistan, India has tried to make sure that there is need to go and help people on the ground. And no country can do that without involving Pakistan, without the cooperation of Pakistan in ensuring physical access to providing aid to Afghanistan. So I look forward to this creating new openings for India and Pakistan and also to the larger region to ensure what is immediately the issue at hand of humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, but moving, using that goodwill that could be generated to also deal with other issues of refugee fallouts, which is a danger in the region. UN says 5.7 Afghans are outside Afghanistan today. They're asking for a separate humanitarian relief for those Afghans. The fear of weaponization, Kalashnikov culture, the fear of terrorism expanding. I think these are all issues which could later come upon, and we could use this goodwill created in working together to help Afghan people to use that to deal with some of the other fundamental challenges that the region faces. Without cooperation of major big countries in the region, India and Pakistan, I'm sure that there is no possibility of moving in that direction. But I think it's in common interest of India and Pakistan today, if we stop looking at, as state actors and look at ourselves as people, that we must make sure that Afghanistan must not regress into becoming sanctuary for, outfits like Al-Qaeda, because that could have a very dangerous outcome in the future. I thank the chair for asking me to speak a little bit from Indian perspective, and I look forward to if there are questions and comments later, and I'll try to respond to them. But with that, sir, let me hand it over back to you, and thank you for inviting me to making me part of today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Saab, for your very enlightening presentation, and I think not only in Pakistan, but I think particularly the Afghans have warmly welcomed the gesture that India has made in regard to sending 50,000 tons of grain and wheat to Afghanistan. They badly need it. I think this is an area where Pakistan and India can cooperate in dealing with the humanitarian crisis, which is literally looming. And the sad part is that the international community is not really responding in the manner that they should. So thank you very much, and we look forward to a Q&A with you at some stage.